Thursday, January 5th, interviewing her. So first, do you want to just tell me about your childhood? I understand you grew up in an orphanage.
My father died when I was 6.
Oh, wow.
Mother had an 8th grade education way back then. She was part of the support for her immigrant family.
Oh.
There were 9 children, brothers and sisters. So she had to work, go to school, get a job, everything to raise us. So she retained guardianship over us, but we went into the Orthodox Jewish Children's Orphanage at that time.
Where was that?
On Parkwood Drive in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And I was in and out twice because she was able to take us home for a while. And then when we went back, it was the Orthodox Jewish Children's Home.
Okay.
And it had moved to Cleveland Heights, University Heights, the Belfair grounds. We had our own cottage because we were still Orthodox. And I was there till I was 16.
Oh, wow. So did you grow up really religious?
Yes,
You did.
with an Orthodox background. And I ran away because of that.
Oh, wow.
Oh well, didn't
What?
last long.
What was the story
Well,
of you running away?
We couldn't go to the high school dances. They're on the weekends.
Oh, because of...
Friday night, Saturday, couldn't do it. Couldn't go to the football games. And I was growing. And so one of the other young ladies and I, we decided to run away. We were going to go to West by God, Virginia. But we ended up in Akron, wrong direction. And to her boyfriend's house. The problem was his mother was head of the Jewish agency. We didn't get any farther. And our director had to come get us.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So did you go to like a Jewish school or was just like a
No,
public?
we went to public schools. I went to Roxborough Elementary. Was that the elementary or was that the junior high? That was the junior high.
Okay.
I don't remember the elementaries. Mount Pleasant was one of them. And then I elected to go to John Adams High School
Oh, cool.
rather than Heights High.
And then did you ever go to college? Did you go to college?
I was in 3 different colleges. Never pursued a career. I just enjoy learning.
Oh, that's
So I went when I was in my early 40s to Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
I went to college there, had a grant, and then we left there and went to Germany.
Oh.
And when I came back, I went to college in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I went to college on the island of Kauai in Hawaii.
Wow. That's so cool. What did you study at each of the colleges?
Basically speech, history, and English.
Okay, cool.
I think the English language is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I dislike intently people who use slang.
I agree. What about your siblings? How many siblings?
I
Do you have
had,
siblings?
my sister passed away a year ago, July 14th. She was 3 years my senior.
Okay.
Her name was Laura. My kid brother is 75, and he lives in South Carolina.
Oh,
And we talk at least once or twice every week.
that's great.
And it creates a big vacuum when you lose one.
I bet, yeah.
You really do. It's a vacuum.
Yeah, I bet. Were your siblings in the orphanage with you?
My sister was in the first home
Okay.
because my kid brother was too young. He was 16 months when my father passed. But he was in the second time we went.
Okay.
The 3 of us were there. My sister only stayed about 6 months, and then she went to live with mother.
Oh, that's
My kid brother and I were there for 6, 7, 8 years.
okay. And then did you go? So you just like still lived in the orphanage? You didn't go to school? You went to like the public high school and stuff?
Oh yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, graduated from John Adams.
Oh, awesome.
Went to beauty school, became a hairdresser.
Okay.
Discovered I was allergic to the chemicals
Uh-oh.
and could not be a hairdresser. And so I had a 1-year career. Whoopee! And Had no skin on my hands when I got married. My
Why?
outer layer was gone from the chemicals.
Oh, really?
Well, in the salons back then, they used formaldehyde.
Oh.
And that's very bad.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Uh-oh, yeah.
So,
Just to backtrack a little bit, you mentioned that your mom was an immigrant. Where were they from?
no, Mom
Oh.
was okay. My grandparents came from Russia.
Oh, okay.
They immigrated to Canada.
Okay.
And then from Canada, for some reason, they ended up in East Palestine, Ohio.
Oh.
Very little town.
Mm-hmm.
Still there. I visited it.
Okay.
Too many deeds. And then they went to Cleveland. Mother was born in a barn in East Palestine, Ohio.
Okay.
No doctor, no birth certificate.
Really?
So her wedding papers, when she got married, she applied for a copy of her birth certificate, and her paperwork said, born September 24th, 1903, 4, or 5.
Wow, they didn't
They
know.
had no idea.
Wow.
So we always celebrated 04, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun.
So
That's
I grew
interesting.
up in Cleveland
Okay.
on Union Avenue and then Kinsman Avenue. Didn't move very far except for the orphanage,
Okay, and then did your
children's home.
Yeah. Did your mother work?
Mother became a licensed practical nurse,
Oh, wow.
the first licensed graduating class in the state of Ohio.
Wow. From what school?
Oh, that I don't recall, though I do have the paperwork.
Cool.
But I forget a lot of things now.
That's okay.
When one gets a little bit on in years, one tends to forget.
That's okay.
It's not a lot of fun, by the way.
Yeah. That's okay. Enjoy it.
But I was very proud of her. But you know, the sad thing is, you never really tell that to your parent.
Yeah.
And I tell everybody, I tell all these young ladies from Hillel,
Mm-hmm.
remember every day to tell your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, I love you.
Yes. That's very important.
Never did that.
Really?
And it's sad.
Yeah.
Also never asked questions about our history.
Yeah. It's important to.
But mother and father never talked about our history.
Really?
I know my father's parents came from Hungary.
Okay.
He was born in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was my father, my Uncle Frank, Aunt Adele, and Aunt Elsie. It turned out there were a couple more brothers that I never knew of.
Really? Wow.
One of those things. But we had all kinds of relatives, aunts and uncles.
Yeah. And were you close with all of your family?
Oh, they were at our house continually.
Yeah. That's great.
We had, we were always renters, that I recall. Daddy worked for an acid company.
Okay.
That's where he died. And
He
he
died
was a
working?
plumber.
Really?
They had an explosion at the acid plant,
Wow.
and he died.
Oh.
And he was 42 years young.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, we had lots of relatives. In fact, I was speaking with my cousin Mitzi, who lives in California. She's 3 years my senior. Sorry, Mitzi. And she was saying, how many cousins do we still have? I'm beginning to forget.
Really?
And I said, so am I. And so we went through the listing of who we could recall
Yeah.
was still alive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sad. You forget that too.
Yeah.
You lose track.
I bet. Yeah. So you lived in a lot of different places, it sounds like.
Well, my first husband was military. He was my high school sweetheart. And he was Air Force. And so, yes, our first duty station was Homestead, Florida,
Okay.
which was very small. It had 2 grocery stores, about 6 bars, and sidewalk on every other side of the street, which was great fun. So if you were out walking, somebody would stop and offer you a lift.
Oh, that's fun.
They didn't know why you were walking.
Yeah.
So, but it was lovely. And then we lived in New Jersey. And then he went overseas and I went to Orlando, Florida. Was a nice place to go.
Yeah.
And then he came back and we went to California. And from California, Delaware. And from Delaware, Ohio. And from Ohio, we were in Dayton.
Okay.
And right, Pat. And from there to Germany, and from Germany to Louisiana, and he retired.
Oh, wow.
And we divorced.
And that, so what kind of like, were you living in like a house in all these different places?
Oh, yes. A couple of places we lived on base. New Jersey, we lived on base. California, we lived on base. Germany, no. He wrote me and said, I can get base housing within a month. And it's like living in America.
Yeah.
And I wrote him back and said, if I wanted to live in America, I'd stay home. I want to live with the people, find out what it's like.
What was it like?
Marvelous. We lived in a little community called Matzen outside of Bitburg, though he was stationed at Spangdahlem, the other direction. And it was a little farming town, and I loved it.
That's great.
Absolutely loved living there.
Yeah. What
Which
about
is
it?
strange considering what happened to us in Germany, the Jewish people, but I felt at home.
Oh, that's great.
My landlady was Frau Umis, and wonderful family. She had a guest house, and she'd run over and say, Helenchen, come help, come help. And I didn't speak much German, but I'd tend her bar while she was cooking or something. It was great fun.
Did everyone speak German there and you spoke English?
Well, I learned Plattdeutsch.
Okay.
Now, the German language is like the King's English is to Cockney.
Okay.
There's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's what Hochdeutsch is to Plattdeutsch.
Okay.
Plattdeutsch is farmer's German.
Okay. So was that
And
hard to not know?
It
Standard
was
German.
more like Yiddish,
Oh.
which I know very little of, but I could recall some.
Right.
And so it was easy to pick up for me. I didn't speak it fluently, but I was able to speak it.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd ride my bicycle up into Bitburg to the bakery for 4 years, and the lady who owned the bakery thought I was local
Oh, really?
because I'd speak to her. And very funny story, we were getting ready to come home, and my husband decided he'd bicycle up with me. First time he'd ever done that. And he never learned to speak much other than count.
Yeah.
And he's walking around the bakery going, ach, zwei, zwei. And she's looking at this strange man, and he'd say vier if he wanted 4. And in German she said to me, this is your husband? And I said, yeah. And she said, what is a good German Frau like you doing with a crazy American? And I was shocked, and I said, but I'm not German. I'm an American lady. She said, no.
She thought you were German the whole time?
Because for all this time we had been conversing, and I rode my bicycle up, rode it home, and it was wonderful. German rye bread, fresh baked, nothing like it in the world. Wonderful.
That's great. So that you weren't living on base, what was it like living on base, like in the other places?
Well, you followed all the rules. They could come inspect. Your place had to be clean. Your children had to be well-mannered. If they caused trouble, you could be forced to move off base. If you got into any difficulties, it was excellent.
It was.
At the time when He was a staff sergeant or a tech sergeant. Tech sergeant, we were in California. He was promoted to tech while we were in California. And we were able to live on base because we could not afford to live on the economy.
Oh.
You don't make a lot of money in the military.
Right.
And, but it was wonderful. We had wonderful neighbors,
That's great.
most of them. When we lived on base in New Jersey, it was brand new base housing. And one of our neighbors across the court had a not too nice dog. And when the kids would run past, the dog would bound out, and he bit my daughter.
Uh-oh.
And they were forced to move off base because that was the third time their animal had bit someone.
So it was very strict.
Yes, but it was wonderful living there. Great friends, great neighbors, still in contact with some.
That's great.
My daughter's still in contact. My son, when he got married in Texas, some of his high school friends from Germany were now in the States. They came to his wedding.
Really? That's amazing.
It's wonderful.
How old were your kids? How old were your kids, like, at each of the bases? Or,
Well,
like,
they were born military.
Oh, they were. Okay.
Yeah.
Where were they born?
Holly was born in the New Base Hospital in Homestead, Florida.
Okay.
Mitch was born in Cleveland, Ohio, at Cleveland Clinic, because we were waiting to go to, because he had been born and I couldn't travel right away. He was 3 months before we went to housing in, well, we went to New Egypt, New Jersey. It was about a year before we were able for base housing.
Oh, wow. So were they going to school, like, at all the different bases?
Oh,
and
yes.
stuff? Okay.
Yeah, and they went to public schools.
They did.
Base housing might have had the schools on base, but it was public school.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So, and my daughter came home from Germany to go to Ohio State. Lasted one semester.
Really?
Flew home to Germany for vacation. And the day that I mailed her tuition for her second semester and bought her airline ticket, she said, "Mommy, I better tell you something."
Uh-oh.
"What is it, honey?" "I don't want to go back to college."
Oh.
"Now you tell me."
After you've already paid?
Yes.
So did she go back or no?
No, she did not go back.
No.
And college was not for Holly.
That's fair.
She, at Ohio State, she had 300 students in one of her classes.
Wow.
She had to be at class at 5 in the morning. A gentleman, a boy,
Yeah.
from her cottage, dorm, had to walk her to her class.
Really?
It was not considered safe at that time for young ladies to walk alone at that time of the
That's
morning.
scary.
She did not feel good. She said, "I'm coming home."
That's good that she came home now.
She came home.
Okay. So after, like, all the military stuff was done, what did you do?
We were in Louisiana. First thing we did was get divorced.
You did?
After
Why?
he
Just-
retired. It was time. He had
That's
fallen
fine,
in
yeah.
love with another young lady.
Okay.
And there's no sense in hanging on even
Of
though
course.
you still love them.
Of course.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We wanted to remain friends. We wanted our children to know we still loved each other, but not enough to still live with each other.
Okay.
And so I went to Colorado on vacation and decided I wanted to live here,
Oh, that's good.
but ended up in Las Vegas because I wanted to visit some GI friends we had made friends with in Germany.
Oh, okay.
So I ended up in Vegas for 16 years,
Oh, wow.
got remarried, and Curtis married his young lady, who's marvelous. They've been married 30-some years now.
Wow.
And my second husband and I have gone to visit them.
Oh, that's great.
So we're great friends, so we're divorced.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm not meant to be married, I guess.
Yeah. That's good.
And I lived in Vegas worked, went to Hawaii, worked, came back from Hawaii, didn't know where I was going to live, trying to decide, and my son was here in Colorado, and he said, "Hey, Mom," and I said, "Okie dokie."
Yeah, so what were you doing in Hawaii? What did you do there?
I ran 2 galleries, an art gallery called Cons Art, and also Frank's Crystal Gallery.
Okay.
And that was from 2 people from Paris, and it was a bronze and crystal gallery, and that's why I went there to open that. But it wasn't enough to live on. Hawaii's expensive.
Yeah.
And frugal as you may be, you're going to need a second job.
Right.
And so I had been visiting con galleries because they were so beautiful. Art gallery, paintings and all. Those 2 pieces came from there.
Oh, those are beautiful.
And applied for a job and ended up managing the little Poi Poo store and managing Frank's. So I was working like 16-hour days, loving it.
That's great.
And then we closed Frank's after about 3 years. I convinced the owners that they weren't making any money.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. They were on the wrong island. They needed to be in Honolulu,
Yeah.
not
More
on
tourists.
Kauai.
Yeah.
And then after 4.5 years, I decided I can't live without my family. My daughter had come once to visit, developed sun poisoning, even though she resided in Las Vegas. And so she never came again.
Yeah.
My best friend came. My cousins came on a cruise. My sister came. None of them ever returned.
Really?
And I needed my family.
Yeah.
So I gave notice and came home and ended up here
Oh, that's
in
great.
Colorado.
How long have you been here?
Almost 20 years, the
Oh.
longest I've lived anywhere.
That's great.
I love
Wow.
it. Would
Good.
not want to live anywhere else.
Good.
Colorado is welcoming. I love the weather, love the area I live in. I'm close to my son,
That's great.
who lives in Silverthorne,
Oh, okay.
and that's only 66 miles.
Yeah.
I'm close to my daughter, 750
In
miles.
Las Vegas?
Yeah, and I'm fortunate to be able to live in this area, and it's wonderful.
Absolutely, yeah, that's great. So, have you continued any Jewish traditions from growing up?
Oh, I'm not Orthodox anymore. Being military, it's difficult to be Orthodox. Oh, and neither of my husbands were Jewish. I don't know why. But I'm what I call conservadox.
Okay.
Yes, I light candles. My menorah is still sitting on the counter.
Yeah.
I haven't cleaned it yet. I just took the metal brackets out of it and soaked them. It's crystal, and I have to clean it with alcohol and put it away. I go to shul here. In fact, 4 of the fellows, Jewish men, and I, about 6-7 years ago, started Friday night shul.
Oh, that's great.
We put together our own siddurim.
Yeah.
It took us 3 months. It was Butch, Bob, Moishi, that's Butch, Michael, and the little fellow, what is his name? I forget. And it took us 3 months to put together a book, and we did, and we had anywhere from 8 to 20 Jewish people come on Friday nights.
Oh, that's great.
And then I go to Saturday services, which are more Russian Orthodox, but they're becoming more conservative now
Okay.
because we're losing many of our Russian people.
Oh, wow. What about, like, did your parent or your mother ever make any food or anything that you still continue to make?
Oh, I can still smell and taste my mother's Friday night dinner.
What did you make?
Chicken soup
Yeah.
from scratch, which we helped with. Usually roast chicken or a roast, and potatoes done with the roast, and carrots and celery and challah. I can smell her challah to this day. She put saffron in it, a little pinch of saffron. So her challah was beautiful yellow instead of white. And it was always braided, which is what I got to help with because I was 3, 4, 5 years old. And I can still taste her potato kugel.
Yeah.
And I have the recipes.
Me too.
And before my tremor was bad, I would still do all this cooking.
Oh, yeah.
Here we don't cook so much.
That's okay. So, now to go on, I understand you're writing a memoir. Do you have any, like, favorite stories or anything that you're including?
The one that is when I was in college in Las Vegas,
Okay.
and taking writing, speech, the professor assigned us 3,000, 10,000 words, write a memory. And I wrote about Sabbath dinner when my dad was still alive, and that is my favorite. And I wrote from the time we woke up in the morning, knowing it was Friday morning, everything that was going on. Mother and Aunt Bess doing the wash, cleaning the house, cleaning the windows. My sister and I doing the couple little things we could help with. And then coming time to start preparing the dinner. My sister got to cut, she was 3 years older than me, with a knife, the potatoes and carrots and celery. I had to wait to help with the challah, mixing, and then when it rose, the braiding, and then my Uncle Frank, Aunt Annie, and Eddie and Marvin would come over for Friday night dinner, and the bread being out, the wine cup, and Daddy with the blessing, and Mama with the Sabbath prayer, and my favorite memory. And I can smell the smells to this day. Is that a reality? Probably not. But in your mind's eye, you think you can.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that is my favorite memory.
Yeah.
I'm still in touch with some of the children. We're all in our 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
I grew up within the children's home.
Oh, wow.
In fact, I went home to Ohio the last week of September, first couple weeks of October, stayed with my cousin Ed and Reen, and at Corky and Lenny's, there were 10 of us got together from the children's home.
Oh, that's great.
And we do that each time I get to go back to Ohio, not too often, 3 or 4 years apart. But we get together and it's wonderful.
That's great.
Absolutely wonderful. It was a good life. It truly was.
That's great.
People think orphanage and they go, oh boy, I'm sorry. I wasn't.
That's great.
We had all the things one could ask for in life. We went to public schools. 2 of the brothers who were there, Jack and Bobby Turoff, both became lawyers.
Wow.
Billy and Eddie Stein both became doctors. Everybody did fairly well.
That's great.
Only one that I know of ended up in jail, and I won't mention him.
That's great. So you were really close with everyone in the home?
Oh yes. My sister did not like it.
No, why not?
She wasn't able to make friends easily.
Okay.
My kid brother didn't like it.
Mm.
He felt lost, and I just found this out.
Really?
And I didn't know that.
Mm. That's
When you
interesting.
get old, you start telling each other things you really never shared before.
Absolutely.
And I never knew that he was unhappy
Really?
because I had a good life there.
That's great. Yeah. So were you like closer with your siblings than you were with the other kids, or no? Was it all just like you were a big
While we
family?
were at the home or
Yeah.
since?
While you were at the home.
They were still my siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
but you become part of your age group.
Right.
My brother was 5 years younger.
Oh, okay.
He was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And you check, you make sure they're all right. My sister, as I said the second time, left after about 6-8 months
Mm.
to go live with Mama.
Yeah.
And so I suppose I was closer to them, but once out, my sister and I, after I married, the last 20 years or so, we spoke every week or two on the phone.
Yeah. That's great.
My brother and I speak every week.
Mm-hmm. Where does your brother live?
South Carolina.
Okay.
North South Carolina,
Yeah.
which is really strange. And it's quite nice down there, and he's pure Southern.
Yeah.
He's no longer a Northerner.
Okay.
He's been there 40 years.
Wow.
And
And he likes it?
he wouldn't leave South Carolina.
Yeah.
That's his home. And he's still in contact with a couple of the younger boys
Mm-hmm.
that were in the orphanage.
That's
And I
great.
think that's marvelous.
Yeah.
And he came to one reunion. I go to the reunions when I can. And he came to the first one because he was in Ohio. And he came only for the Friday night, the first night dinner.
Yeah.
And then he stayed overnight. He got a hotel room, and we sat and talked all night long. And my sister came for the closing breakfast.
Oh, that's great.
But that's when I found out she never really,
She didn't enjoy it.
but I did.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about it? What about it did you like so much?
All the kids.
Yeah.
All the friends.
That's great.
We were never alone.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the most beautiful, one of the boys asked me one time, and this was since we're grown up and all, he said, "Who did you think was the most beautiful of all the girls?" I never had to think.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Norma Kaufman.
Really?
She was beautiful. And he said, really? And the conversation went on from there. She was so well made up and so tailored and so lady.
Yeah. That's great.
One of the girls, Joyce Kohler, and I were blood sisters. We ran away together.
Yeah.
We were just a good fit.
That's great.
And yeah,
Is,
I liked everything about it. I loved our house parents. They were well, the last couple was okay. The director was wonderful. Our first director at the Orthodox orphanage home wanted to adopt me,
really?
and Donnie Oshansky. And my mother and his mother and father said absolutely not.
Really? Why?
But because they were our parents.
Yeah, and they could
Even
still
though we
take care
were
of
in
you.
the children's home, they did the best they could for us.
That's great, yeah.
They weren't giving us away.
Absolutely.
And Milt Wilner and his lovely wife, I believe her name was Faye, were at the Orthodox Jewish Children's Home. Abe Kostick was the one at the first home. I'm surprised I remember the names.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But it was a good life.
That's great.
It was the life Mama could give us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And she was a great woman.
That's great. So while you were in the home, were you still like, did you still talk to your mother a lot?
Oh, each weekend that she was off work, she'd either come to the home, which was an hour and a half ride on the bus,
Oh, wow.
one way, or we would meet her on 105th and Euclid. Shelley, Laura, and myself, we'd take the bus, and we'd go to a matinee, and then we'd go to Tasty Deli, a kosher deli, which was down one block and across the street.
Oh, that's great.
And then we'd take the bus home. But Mama was always there.
That's great.
Yes, she was a wonderful woman.
Good.
Just as I said, never remember to tell her that.
Yeah, it's important. So is the home still there today?
No,
No.
the home is gone. We have reunions.
Yeah.
They've been meeting for, I guess, 25, 30 years. I started in 2000 or 2001,
Okay.
and I've been to 3.
That's great.
And because they meet in Cleveland, and
Yeah.
I try to go, but the home, I don't know when it stopped being Orthodox Children's Home, but Belfair is a home for children who need assistance
Okay.
and children who are not, will never grow up, and children with serious mental problems. And I don't know what else it's for, but one of the ladies, Sherry and I, she came by my cousin's, picked me up, and we drove through Belfair. We had a tour, and then we were allowed to drive through on our own to see the changes, and it was nice.
Were there a lot of changes?
Oh yeah.
Like what?
Well, we went into our cottage,
Oh, wow.
which, no, we didn't go into our cottage. We went into the Belfair main building, which has changed a lot. And our cottage is some kind of an admin building, but it has children. But we noticed that they closed off the fire escapes. They're walled in now.
Really?
The downstairs outer kitchen doors are closed off now
Why? So that they
because of the children that
so
are
they
in
can't
there
get
now.
out?
I guess. We were
Wow.
not allowed to tour it.
Really?
But it broke my heart because in the home we had a girl's side and a boy's side. Downstairs it was walk through, you know.
Yeah.
The boys had their own dorms on their side, we had ours. But the funny part was that upstairs, the laundry room, where you sorted the laundry and was a walk-through.
Okay.
So, and it was never locked.
Yeah.
So we could still get through to each side. We thought that was hysterical.
Yeah.
But we ate dinners apart, the boys on their side, the girls on there. The shul was on our side in our cottage.
Okay.
The boys had the pool room, bicycle room on their side, but we'd go through.
Yeah.
We could all get into the kitchen, which we did maybe once a month. We raided the kitchen at night, and we'd wear our stocking caps. Do kids still wear stocking caps?
Not really.
No. We'd wear them, we'd go down the fire escape, we'd manage to get in, and we'd get into the fridge. They didn't bother to lock the fridges. And we'd take salami, bologna, bread, maybe some mustard, pickles if we could find it, and anything else that looked good, and we'd put it in our stocking caps and climb back up the fire escape.
Yeah.
Now, they had to know we were doing it because the food was missing, but they couldn't prove it
Right.
because we had eaten it. And we'd giggle and laugh, and we had a great time.
That's great.
And we went to Sunday school. We went to confirmation classes. We went to Hebrew school.
So did you speak Hebrew? Or,
They never taught us to speak Hebrew.
really?
They taught us to read it and write it,
Okay.
which is sad
Yeah.
because I could read it and write it, but I never knew what I was saying.
Wow.
Now, the prayers now, I've been saying them for 74 years.
Yeah.
I know what they mean, their meanings, because there's the English, there's the Hebrew,
Right.
and there's the transliteration. Yay
Yeah.
for transliteration. But I think it's sad that they didn't teach us to speak the language. So I can only, like Yiddish, speak a few words.
Right.
Yiddish I can't speak because though our family spoke it fluently, my grandmother Sarah lived with us. She died when I was 3. She was my last grandparent, my mother's mother. She had one wish,
Yeah.
and she imparted this to all 9 of her children, 7 of which lived in the area. Never speak Russian, Hungarian, or Yiddish
Really?
in front of the kinder. She was terrified of pogroms, and she thought if we learned to speak the language, that might happen in America.
Wow.
So our parents, all of our parents, adhered to that wish. Not one of us, cousins, spoke Yiddish,
Really?
or Hungarian, or Russian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
very sad.
Yeah.
But because she was afraid.
Yeah,
And
that's
even after
interesting.
she passed,
You
they
never-
all still adhered to it.
That's great. Wow. That's
They spoke it
interesting.
among themselves,
But not to you.
but only if we were not in the room. We'd catch words.
Yeah.
You
So
know.
you recognize it, but you don't know it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yiddish is part of the American language now.
Right. Yeah.
So many words of it.
Yeah. So in the home, did you guys have like bar and bat mitzvahs, or?
We didn't have bat mitzvahs. They weren't done then.
Oh. Really?
There was no such thing. I'm 80
Wow.
years old. There
I
was
didn't
no
know
such
that.
thing as a bat mitzvah.
But the boys had bar mitzvahs.
The boys had bar mitzvahs, and we never thought to say, well, why don't we have them?
Yeah.
There was none of this male-female thing, except
Right.
once.
What was it?
The boys were always late coming to shul. Always
Funny.
late. We girls were on time,
Yeah.
and I knew the service backward and forward.
Really?
And I'd say to Milt Wilner, Milt, can I start the service? And each time I said that, he'd have to say, Lainey, you cannot be up on the bima. Only the men can do that. It is tradition. Okay. I didn't like the idea of it. I wished I could do it,
Yeah.
but I never could. The first time I got to hold the Torah, I lived in Vegas. My son was getting married, and I wanted to do an Onik Shabbat in honor of his coming marriage for the temple that I went to. So I asked the rabbi, and he said that would be lovely. My daughter and I prepared everything,
That's great.
took it. He called us up to the bima. I'd never been on a bima.
Really? Wow.
He had my daughter open the drapes and had me pick up the Torah, and I could not stop the tears.
Wow.
I had never had the honor, the privilege of holding a Torah.
Wow.
When I came to Colorado, and I was going to one of the little shuls, no rabbi,
Yeah.
and it'll come to me. And they'd meet at the Unitarian Congregation Church for High Holy Days because there were so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And I never go late to shul.
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes early. I will not be late. I won't be late to anything.
Yeah.
And they called me up to the bima to say the blessing. Tears. I had never in my life done that.
Wow.
And I said when I got up on the bima, I don't have a talism. He said, here. And
Wow.
marvelous.
That's amazing.
For someone who'd never had the opportunity because tradition and orthodoxy said it wasn't done.
Yeah. So when the changes started occurring, like when women started being able to have like a bat mitzvah and going on to the bima and reading from the Torah and stuff, how did you respond? How did you respond to those changes?
When I came here, I thought I would like to have a bat mitzvah,
Yeah.
but I've never done it.
Mm-hmm.
I still would like to, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
My cousins in Ohio said they'd fly in for it. Yay.
Yeah.
I think it would be a completion for me, but I'd cry.
Mm-hmm.
I cry easy.
Yeah.
And you don't cry on the bima.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I hadn't married Jewish, my son, when his father went to Thailand, we were in Dayton, Ohio, came up to me after his birthday, or just before it, and he said, how old do I have to be bar mitzvah? And I went, I didn't think he realized, even though we went to synagogue and we went to church,
Yeah.
because
yeah.
my kids had to know both sides of their family.
Absolutely.
So I called Jewish family in Dayton. There was a little rabbi at Antioch College. That was my backyard, literally.
Really?
Walk out of my backyard onto Antioch's grounds.
Yeah.
And I called and he said, I'd love to help.
That's great.
So I invited him for Friday night dinner and a knock on my door. And I went to the door and there's this hippie. And he's wearing a dashiki, blue jeans, flip-flops, long hair. And he said, hi, I'm Rabbi Bob. And he was.
Yeah.
And he was the lay rabbi at Antioch College. And he was finishing up his rabbinical studies. And he taught my son.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah. And it was wonderful. And he did it all in Hebrew. And I was so proud of him.
Yeah.
And my son decided this is the way he wishes to go. And my daughter is married to Joey Miller, a nice Jewish boy,
That's
and
great.
we turned out okay.
Good. Good. So, what made you want to write your memoir?
My cousin Mitzi was at my home in Federal Heights. I had a mobile home, lived over there. And she and Ethel, her roomie, they share a house, drove in and we were talking about memories. And we got to giggling so hard and laughing at these things. And we recorded them.
That's great.
And then I called my kid brother and asked him some. And he told me one that wasn't funny, but it was hysterical.
Yeah.
And we
What
couldn't.
was it?
Oh. My cousin Harold, my Aunt Rosie's son, drove over to show my mama his new car.
Yeah.
And Shelley was in the house. It was the weekend. And Mama was so excited. Going down the stairs, there were 5 steps. She fell.
Uh-oh.
They called the ambulance. They checked her out. Mama was fine, having a cup of tea. She still wanted to see the new car. So she decided she was going to go down the porch steps. They were bigger. She fell.
Uh-oh.
They
Okay.
called the ambulance. My brother's telling me this, and it's hysterical. We're just laughing so hard. And he said even Mama was laughing. It was sad because she got to see the car. She made it down. She had never told me about that, but my brother did.
That's great.
So that was a memory. So I got to thinking about all this and all the places I've lived, all the things we've done and seen. Things I've never told my kids. My family doesn't know.
Yeah.
So I did my memoirs.
Oh, that's great.
Is
So
it-
everyone knows.
The story of my life? Good heavens, no. That would bore people
Yeah.
to tears.
Just
It's
fun
my memories that popped into my mind, and I'd write them down. Are they
That's
in
great.
order? Good heavens, no. They're in the way they came to my mind.
That's great.
My first memory was when I was 3, my grandma passing away in the house.
Yeah.
That's as clear as a bell. Wondering where the old lady was, this big old lady. She wasn't big, she was less than 5 feet tall.
Wow.
To me, she was big.
Yeah.
And why she wasn't there and why Mama was standing at the post crying, I didn't know.
Wow.
That was the day my grandma died, my first memory.
Wow.
And I decided family have to know this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So 5 of family have copies. And when I get a little able, I'll make 5 more copies and send those out.
That's great.
And yeah, and my niece Heidi, my sister's eldest daughter, only daughter,
Yeah.
is doing family history. And she's got the Levy side and the Pollock side done for like 10 generations. We didn't know we had all these family.
Yeah.
We discovered Grandma had a brother also in Cleveland. We never met him.
Really.
And his
Wow.
family's still there. Lots of people.
Yeah. Did
So-
you ever meet them?
And no,
No.
Heidi just found this out 2 years
recently?
ago.
Oh, wow.
She's in contact with him.
That's great.
And they're talking on the phone and meeting more and more people. And it's amazing.
Wow. That's great.
And so I'm going to make copies. I've got what she's done. She made me copies. 2 loose leaf notebooks. And I'm going to make copies and send it to my cousin Mitzi so she can give it to her daughter Tracy.
That's great.
Yeah. So
Wow.
we're still finding family. And it's great fun.
Yeah. That's
Life has been good.
good.
Life is a ball.
Good.
It's what you make it, and I've had a wonderful life.
Good.
2 marvelous husbands, and they really are good people. We're all still
That's
friends.
great.
Their families still consider me family.
That's great.
When I went to Ohio, I saw my in-law side of the family. All the kids, we met at my sister-in-law's, and it was wonderful, and their kids.
Yeah.
And Auntie Elaine, why don't you come home? Because I'm home in Colorado. I'm happy there.
Good.
That's home to me now.
That's amazing.
So,
Wow.
but life has been good.
Good. I'm glad.
And I know there are people who have been in children's homes like me who think the world's against them. Bad life. No, it wasn't. It's
Good.
what you made of it. And life is,
Yeah.
and it's really a bore growing old. It's a nuisance.
Yeah.
There's, you're fortunate to be able to grow older.
Absolutely.
You're still on the green side of the grass, yay! But I tell people there's a lot of tarnish on the golden years. But life is good. It's what you make of it, and
Well, that's
it's
great.
wonderful.
Good. Well, so, given that, what's like one piece of advice that you would give to like people my age?
Tell your parents you love them. and write.
Right. I remember.
Every day, write a thought, a memory, something you saw. It doesn't have to be a page.
Just one
2
thing.
lines, 1 line,
Yeah.
3 words. Our girls from Hillel Academy were Adopt a Grandma program.
Yeah.
I've been doing it since it started here. I think it's 4 years now.
Oh, wow.
And they're wonderful girls. And when they graduate, they go on to 9th grade. They have a graduation. And I get the same thing each year for each of my graduate girls.
What do you get?
It's a little book to write in, and pens,
That's great.
and a little blurb about why they should write.
That's
Because
so
I believe you pass on who you are,
nice. Yeah.
and you can't if you haven't written it down.